Okay, so get this. We're diving deep into SETI. That's the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, obviously.
Okay.
You know it. We've got excerpts from the Wikipedia article on SETI.
Okay.
And the history is fascinating. But the big question, right? The one that keeps popping up is, if intelligent life IS out there,
Right.
why haven't we found it yet?
It's a good question.
That's what we're going to explore today.
I think what's so interesting is that the search started with so much optimism almost a century ago.
Really?
With, some of the earliest pioneers of radio technology. Think Tesla, Guglielmo Marconi.
Wow, so early on.
Yeah, they were convinced that radio waves were the key to, talking to our neighbors in space. They even thought we might chat with
Martians.
Yeah. It's wild to think that back in 1924, they actually had a National Radio Silence Day.
Oh, wow.
Specifically to listen for any signals coming from Mars. Imagine that, the whole world holding its breath, radios tuned in.
Yeah, waiting for a sign. It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
You got to admire that hopeful enthusiasm.
Yeah, totally.
But it's true. Those early attempts lacked a focused scientific approach.
Right.
That shift happened in 1959 with a groundbreaking paper by physicists Philip Morrison and Giuseppe Cocconi.
Okay.
They were among the first to suggest using microwaves for SETI, even recommending specific frequencies and targets.
So they were the ones who really laid the groundwork for the modern SETI we know today. That leads us to 1960 and Frank Drake's Project Ozma, which was the first official SETI experiment, if I'm wrong.
Exactly. Project Ozma was it was a game changer. It really set the stage for a lot of the methods that we still use. Drake targeted two specific stars, Tau Ceti and Epsilon Eridani, both relatively close to Earth. And focused on the water hole frequency range.
Okay, wait, hold on. The water hole. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
What's so special about that?
Well, it gets its name because it sits between the spectral lines of hydrogen and hydroxyl.
Okay.
And what do those two elements make when combined?
A water.
Water, which is, of course, essential for life as we know it.
Yeah.
So the thinking was that any intelligent civilization would recognize the significance of these elements. And might choose those frequencies to transmit signals.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
So if you were designing a cosmic beacon, you'd want to use a frequency that, screamed, hey, we've got water over here.
Exactly.
It's like putting out a welcome mat.
Precisely. And it highlights that early SETI research was very much shaped by our understanding of life on Earth.
So we were essentially looking for a mirror image of ourselves out there. What if other forms of life don't rely on water? What if they communicate in ways we haven't even thought of?
Those are the kind of questions that would push SETI research in new directions in the decades to come.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got the early groundwork laid with Morrison and Cocconi's paper, followed by Drake's Project Ozma. What happened next?
I feel like things started getting a lot more ambitious in the 70s.
Yeah, you're right. The 1970s saw a surge in both technological innovation and, you could say, boldness of vision. In SETI. For example, NASA funded a study that led to Project Cyclops.
Project Cyclops, that was the proposal for a massive, gigantic array of radio telescope dishes.
It was. Imagine an array of 1,500 radio telescopes.
Wow.
Well, it never got built. The sheer scale of the concept was influential, demonstrating just how seriously some scientists were taking the possibility of detecting signals from other civilizations.
1,500 dishes, that would have been mind-blowing.
Right.
But I guess the cost must have been astronomical, too.
It's true. Funding has always been a challenge for SETI, particularly for these large-scale projects. Around the same time, a more resourceful approach emerged. Instead of building brand new telescopes,
researchers began using existing ones for SETI observations. And that brings us to the story of the Ohio State University Big Ear Telescope. And the famous WOW signal.
The WOW signal. I remember reading about that.
Yeah.
It's one of those mysteries that really captures the imagination, right?
It is.
Did we really catch a glimpse of an alien transmission, or was it just a glitch?
Yeah, it's one of the most enduring mysteries in SETI history. In 1977, the Big Ear picked up a surprisingly strong signal.
Wow.
It seemed to fit the profile of an artificial extraterrestrial transmission.
Okay.
The problem is, it only lasted for 72 seconds and was never detected again.
So we got a brief hello and then Silence.
It's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah.
But it did underscore the need for dedicated, purpose-built instruments.
Okay.
For SETI. We needed something more than just repurposed telescopes. And this is where Paul Horowitz, a physicist at Harvard, enters the picture. He really spearheaded the development of sophisticated spectrum analyzers designed specifically for SETI.
So we're moving from piggybacking on existing equipment to developing, specialized tools for the job.
Right.
I bet that was a turning point.
It was a significant shift.
Yeah.
And Horowitz's work was really pivotal.
Yeah.
His first project, Sentinel, used a portable spectrum analyzer with a capacity for 131,000 narrowband channels.
131,000 channels.
Which was revolutionary at the time.
That's a far cry from the single-channel receivers they were using in Project Ozma.
Yeah.
We're talking about a massive leap in capability.
It's true. And it shows how technology was beginning to catch up.
Yeah.
With the ambitions of SETI researchers.
Right.
And it didn't stop there. Sentinel was followed by Project Meta.
Okay.
Which stands for Mega Channel Extraterrestrial Assay.
Catchy.
Which boosted the channel count to 8.4 million.
Wow.
And get this, even Steven Spielberg contributed funding.
Spielberg funding a SETI project. That's awesome.
To this project.
It really shows how this quest to find extraterrestrial intelligence has really captured the public imagination.
Absolutely.
Even in Hollywood.
And the rapid pace of innovation continued. Meta was quickly followed by Beta, the billion-channel extraterrestrial assay, which could scan an incredible 250 million channels simultaneously.
Wow. Okay, so we've got this incredible increase in capability.
Yeah.
But I imagine there were still challenges, right? Especially when it comes to funding. Government support for SETI has always been a bit up and down.
That's true.
Hasn't it?
While private funding was fueling these technological advancements, government support was a bit more fickle.
Right.
NASA launched the Microwave Observing Program, MOP for short,
MOP,
in 1992. It was an ambitious program that combined a general sky survey with targeted searches of nearby stars.
It sounds promising. What happened to it?
Unfortunately, it fell victim to budget cuts.
Oh, no.
It's the year after it launched.
Right.
Congress pulled the plug.
That must have been a major setback.
Which was a major setback for the SETI community.
Yeah. It's a shame, but it's a common theme in science, right? The struggle for funding, especially for projects that are seen as, a bit out there.
That's true.
So what happened after MOP?
Wow.
Was that the end of large-scale SETI projects?
Not at all. The SETI Institute wasn't giving up that easily.
Yeah, okay.
They managed to secure private funding to resurrect the targeted search part of MOP, and in 1995, Project Phoenix rose from the ashes.
Project Phoenix, that one rings a bell.
Yeah.
They used some of the most powerful radio telescopes around the world, didn't they?
That's right. Project Phoenix took advantage of some of the most impressive telescopes on the planet. Including the Parkes Radio Telescope in Australia, the Green Bank Telescope in West Virginia, and of course, the iconic Arecibo Observatory in Puerto Rico.
Okay, so we're starting to see a shift in how SETI is being funded.
Yeah.
Private funding steps in when government support falters. Driven by individuals and organizations who are passionate about finding answers, it really speaks to the enduring power of this question.
It does.
Are we alone? And
it sets the stage for the even more ambitious and innovative projects that were just around the corner.
Okay, that's it for part 1 of our SETI deep dive. We've journeyed from those early, almost whimsical attempts to listen for Martians to the development of increasingly sophisticated technology funded by a mix of public and private sources. Join us for part 2, where we'll explore the current state of Radio SETI and some of the mind-blowing projects happening right now. Welcome back. Last time we left off with Project Phoenix, which used some of the most powerful radio telescopes on the planet to search for extraterrestrial intelligence. It's incredible to think about all those radio waves that we've been pumping out into space.
Oh, right.
Earth has been broadcasting radio signals for over a century.
It's crazy.
It's like we've been sending out a constant stream of "we're here" messages.
Yeah, and those signals have already traveled quite a distance.
Really?
Think about it. Those radio waves have already reached over 1,000 nearby stars.
Wow.
So if there are any civilizations out there with sufficiently advanced technology orbiting those stars, they've likely already detected us.
That's both exciting and a little unnerving. It's like our radio and TV broadcasts have been unintentionally announcing our presence to the cosmos.
It makes you wonder, if we're leaking radio waves, wouldn't other civilizations be doing the same?
Right, exactly.
That's the key assumption behind Radio SETI.
Okay.
The idea is that intelligent life, as it develops technology, would inevitably discover radio waves.
Makes sense.
And just like us, some of their transmissions might escape into space,
right,
becoming detectable signs of their existence.
So we're looking for those unintentional radio leaks. But you also mentioned something called the microwave window.
Yeah.
Why has radio remained such a primary focus for SETI?
Well, the microwave window is a specific range of radio frequencies that can pass through Earth's atmosphere with minimal interference.
Oh.
It's like a clear channel through all the cosmic noise.
Oh, I see.
And within that window, there's the water hole.
Right.
We discussed earlier.
Yeah.
Which holds particular interest because of its potential connection to water-based life.
So it's like we're tuning our radio dials to the frequencies where we're most likely to pick up a clear signal from across the vastness of space.
Exactly.
But even with the microwave window, wouldn't we need incredibly sensitive equipment to detect these faint signals?
Absolutely. And that's where projects like the Allen Telescope Array, ATA, come in.
Okay.
It's a specialized radio telescope array located in California that was partially funded by Paul Allen.
The ATA, didn't it have a bit of a rocky start?
It did. It faced some initial setbacks, but thankfully, generous donations allowed for upgrades, significantly boosting its sensitivity and expanding the range of frequencies it can observe. This is a great example of how private funding has been crucial for advancing SETI research.
It really shows the dedication of people who believe in this search. But what makes the ATA so special for SETI? What sets it apart from other radio telescopes?
One of its most innovative features is its multi-beaming capability.
Okay.
Meaning it can observe multiple areas of the sky simultaneously.
That's cool.
This is incredibly useful for ruling out false positives.
Right, because if you pick up a signal in multiple beams, it's more likely to be interference from Earth.
Exactly.
But if it only shows up in one beam, that's much more intriguing.
It's like a process of elimination.
Yeah.
Narrowing down the possibilities until you hopefully hit on something truly extraterrestrial.
Exactly. And it highlights the constant challenge in SETI, distinguishing a true signal from the background noise of the universe.
Right.
It's like trying to find a needle in a cosmic haystack. So are there other projects out there taking on this challenge?
Definitely. There's SERENDIP, which stands for Search for Extraterrestrial Radio Emissions from Nearby Developed Intelligent Populations.
SERENDIP, that's a mouthful. What's their strategy?
They cleverly analyze data that's already been collected for other astronomical purposes.
Oh, interesting.
It's a highly efficient way to maximize the use of existing telescopes. They essentially piggyback on observations made for other research projects.
I see.
And sift through that data for any hints of artificial signals.
That's brilliant. It's like getting double the scientific bang for your buck.
Right.
But I imagine going through all that data is a monumental task.
It certainly is. And that's where distributed computing projects like SETI at Home come in.
Ah, yes, SETI at Home. I remember downloading that screensaver years ago, feeling like I was part of a global effort to find aliens.
Yeah.
It was amazing to see how everyday people could contribute to cutting-edge science.
It was a pioneering project that demonstrated the power of citizen science. But of course, raw computing power is just one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
There's also the need for ambition and a willingness to think big.
Yeah.
Which brings us to Breakthrough Listen.
Breakthrough Listen. Now, that's a project that definitely aims high. Didn't it have a massive budget and a long time frame?
It did. Breakthrough Listen was launched in 2015 with a budget of $100 million and a 10-year time frame.
Wow.
It's one of the most comprehensive SETI projects to date.
Okay.
Utilizing multiple telescopes around the world, including the Green Bank Telescope and the Parkes Observatory. And what sets it apart is that it includes optical searches.
Optical searches.
Which are a fascinating departure from traditional radio SETI.
So instead of listening for radio waves, they're looking for light signals.
Yeah.
Could aliens really be communicating with lasers? It sounds like something out of a science fiction movie.
It might seem far-fetched, but there are compelling reasons why advanced civilizations might favor lasers over radio for interstellar communication.
Okay.
For one, lasers can carry far more information in a much narrower beam.
That makes sense if you want your message to reach across light years.
Right.
You'd want it to be as focused and powerful as possible.
Precisely. And it highlights the constant evolution of SETI research. We're no longer just listening for radio waves.
Right.
We're exploring a whole spectrum of possibilities.
It's exciting to see how SETI is constantly pushing the boundaries of technology and our understanding of what's possible.
Yeah.
Speaking of pushing boundaries, we can't overlook the latest player in the game, China's 500-meter aperture spherical telescope,
right?
Or FAST for short.
Yes, FAST.
It's currently the largest filled aperture radio telescope in the world.
It is an amazing instrument.
And what's particularly interesting is that SETI is a core science goal for this facility. It marks a shift in priorities for China, a country that hasn't traditionally been as involved in SETI research.
Yeah, it's a significant development.
It seems like SETI is truly becoming a global endeavor, which makes sense,
right,
considering it's a question that has implications for all of humanity.
It does. And it's not just these large-scale government-funded projects that are contributing to the search. We're also seeing the rise of community SETI projects, driven by the passion and dedication of amateur astronomers.
That's awesome. So it's not just big institutions and governments involved in SETI.
Right.
Everyday enthusiasts are contributing to the search as well.
Exactly.
That's what I love about science. It's a collaborative effort, open to anyone with a curious mind and a willingness to explore.
Absolutely.
The SETI League, for example, coordinates a global network of small amateur-built radio telescopes as part of their project Argus, with the ambitious goal of achieving real-time coverage of the entire sky.
It's impressive.
So we've got thousands of backyard astronomers joining forces with scientists and engineers around the world.
I know, it's great.
All united by this common goal of finding evidence of other intelligent life.
It's a testament to the enduring power of this quest.
But tell me, with all these incredible radio telescopes and massive computing power at our disposal, are we still limited to just listening for radio signals? Are there other, perhaps even more mind-blowing approaches being explored?
You're right. The methods used in SETI are constantly evolving.
Yeah.
While radio astronomy has been the mainstay for decades, researchers are constantly exploring new possibilities and pushing the boundaries of what we can detect.
Okay.
And that brings us to some truly fascinating alternative approaches.
Welcome back, space explorers. We've covered a lot of ground in our SETI deep dive, from the early days of, radio listening to the incredible technology being used today. But beyond the, nuts and bolts of the search, there's a whole philosophical side to SETI that's equally fascinating. It's not just about finding aliens. It's about what that discovery would mean for humanity.
It's true. The very act of searching for another intelligence forces us to confront some pretty big questions about ourselves. And our place in the cosmos. It challenges our perspective, making us realize that we might not be the only intelligent beings out there.
It reminds me of that Carl Sagan quote.
Yeah.
The universe is a pretty big place. If it's just us, seems like an awful waste of space. It really captures that sense of wonder and possibility that drives SETI research.
Absolutely. And if we do find definitive proof of extraterrestrial intelligence,
right,
it would be a game changer. It would revolutionize our understanding of biology, evolution,
wow,
and even consciousness itself.
Yeah.
Imagine the impact on our society,
right,
our culture, our religions. It would be a paradigm shift.
It'd be huge.
Forcing us to rethink our entire worldview.
It's mind-blowing to think about. It would be like the ultimate culture shock, but on a cosmic scale.
Right.
But even if we never find that definitive signal or artifact, the journey itself has value.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't you say?
SETI pushes the boundaries of science and technology,
Right,
inspiring innovation and new ways of thinking. Even if we don't find what we're looking for,
yeah,
the search itself leads to incredible discoveries.
It's like a cosmic treasure hunt.
Right.
Even if we don't find the treasure, we discover amazing things along the way.
Yeah.
And it's a journey we're taking together. SETI requires global collaboration, pushing us to work together to solve one of the biggest mysteries of our existence.
Exactly. The challenges of SETI, the vast distances, the technological hurdles, the sheer uncertainty,
right,
they force us to transcend national boundaries and cultural differences.
That's true.
It's a unifying endeavor, a testament to our shared curiosity.
It really is. But it also raises some interesting ethical questions.
Yeah.
If we do find evidence of an alien civilization,
right,
should we try to contact them? What if they're not as friendly as ET?
That's a debate that's been going on for a long time in the SETI community.
Yeah.
There are valid concerns about the potential risks of revealing our presence to an unknown, and potentially more advanced intelligence. We simply don't know their intentions.
Yeah.
And there's no guarantee they'd be benevolent.
It's like that classic science fiction trope, right? Aliens arriving on Earth with hostile intentions.
Right.
But then again, maybe they'd come in peace, offering us knowledge and technology beyond our wildest dreams. We just don't know.
It's all speculation at this point.
Right.
Which is why it's crucial to proceed with caution and a great deal of international cooperation.
Yeah.
The decision of whether or not to contact an extraterrestrial civilization, if we ever find one, should be made collectively with input from scientists, ethicists, and governments around the world.
It's a huge responsibility, and it highlights the need for careful consideration as we continue the SETI search.
Yeah.
But beyond those, practical concerns, SETI also forces us to ask a much deeper question. What does it mean to be intelligent? What are the hallmarks of a truly advanced civilization?
That's a question that goes beyond the realm of science.
Yeah.
And into philosophy.
Right.
Even spirituality.
It's a big one.
Are we talking about technological prowess, or is there something more to it? Do advanced civilizations prioritize peace and cooperation, or are they driven by the same conflicts and ambitions that plague humanity? These are questions we can't answer with telescopes and algorithms alone.
It's a humbling thought, realizing that our current definition of intelligence might be too narrow.
Yeah.
There could be countless forms of intelligence out there operating on principles you haven't even begun to comprehend.
That's what makes the search so compelling.
Right.
It's not just about finding another civilization. It's about expanding our understanding of what intelligence itself could be. What if the lack of a clear detection isn't a sign of failure, but a reflection of our limited understanding? What if we're looking for the wrong things or listening on the wrong channels?
It's a mind-bending thought, and it makes me realize we've only just begun to scratch the surface of this cosmic mystery. We've explored the incredible history of SETI, the ingenious methods used to scan the skies, and the philosophical questions it raises about our place in the universe. And even though we don't have a definitive answer yet, the search itself is a testament to human curiosity, our drive to explore, and our desire to connect with something bigger than ourselves. So for anyone listening who's ever looked up at the stars and wondered if we're alone, keep looking up, keep asking questions, and never lose that sense of wonder.
Who knows? Maybe one of you listening will make the discovery that changes everything. Or maybe you'll find something even more profound along the way. Until then, keep exploring.
All right, welcome back to the deep dive. This time, we're diving into a cartoon classic, Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner.
You know, I was looking over the Wikipedia article, and I have to admit, it's made me see these characters in a whole new light.
Yeah, they seem so simple at first glance, right? But there's actually a lot more going on beneath the surface.
Oh, for sure. Like, I knew the Coyote was always after the Roadrunner and, never caught him. But I never really thought about why. And apparently there are all these rules that the creators followed. It wasn't just random chaos, you know what I mean?
It's true. Chuck Jones, the guy who created them, he had a very specific vision. He wanted to make something funny, but also make you think a little. And those rules were a big part of that.
Okay, so let's get into those rules then. The Wikipedia article lists 9 of them. And some of them are pretty wild.
Well, the rule that the Roadrunner can only hurt Wile E by going beep, beep. It seems simple, but it sets up a really interesting dynamic between them, Right. The Roadrunner isn't actively trying to trick the Coyote or set traps or anything. He's just out there living his life, and that's enough to make Wile E go crazy.
Exactly. And it kind of speaks to a bigger theme in these cartoons. It's about chasing these impossible dreams.
Yeah, because no matter what Wile E does, no matter how many crazy Acme gadgets he tries, he just can't catch that Roadrunner.
It's almost like a metaphor for life.
Yeah.
We all have these ambitions and desires, but sometimes they just seem so out of reach. And sometimes the more you chase them, the further away they get.
It's weird. I used to think of Wile E as the bad guy, the relentless predator. But after reading all this, I almost feel bad for him. The article says he's this symbol of want, always wanting something he can't have.
And that's where that Mark Twain connection comes in, which I think is so cool. In Roughing It, Twain talks about the Coyote as this skinny, desperate creature, a living symbol of want. And that's totally Wile-E, right?
No.
Always hungry, always scheming, always just a little bit behind.
Yeah, like he's trapped in this endless cycle of desire and disappointment. And then all those crazy Acme gadgets, those don't help either.
Oh yeah, the Acme Corporation's a whole other layer of satire in these cartoons.
Yeah.
It's not just that the gadgets are outlandish, it's that they always backfire in these, like, incredibly funny ways.
Right. It's like the universe itself is against him. But in a way, it's his own fault. Like, he keeps relying on these quick fixes, these technological shortcuts, instead of, actually trying to outsmart the Roadrunner.
And that ties into a bigger commentary about us and our relationship with technology.
Mm.
We always think we can solve all our problems with gadgets and gizmos, but sometimes they just create more problems,
It's so crazy how these cartoons were made decades ago, but they still feel so relevant. I mean, we're more reliant on technology than ever. I bet everyone listening has felt that urge to just hit that buy now button, hoping for a miracle solution.
That's what good satire does, though. It shows us our own weaknesses and makes us laugh at ourselves. But it also makes us feel something for the characters. We see ourselves in Wile-E's desperation, his endless pursuit of something he can never have.
Speaking of Wile-E, did you know that he actually talks in some cartoons? And not just random noises, like he has a real accent.
Yeah, he actually introduces himself in one short as Wile-E Coyote. Super genius. It's hilarious because it's such a contrast to all his failures. He's got this intelligent side, but he's also incredibly inept. It's like another layer of humor to his character.
It's like he's trying to convince himself he's a genius, just as much as he's trying to convince the audience. But those Acme products always give him away. And of course, we can't forget about the Roadrunner. That beep, beep is probably one of the most recognizable sounds in cartoon history.
And it works so well, it perfectly captures his speed and how he doesn't even care about the coyote chasing him. It's like a sonic taunt to Wile-E, reminding him he'll never catch him.
I was reading about how that sound was made, and it's actually just a background artist imitating a car horn. So simple, but it's become iconic.
It really shows the creativity of the team who made these cartoons. They didn't need fancy technology or anything. They just had a good ear for what worked. And that beep, beep, it's totally tied to the Roadrunner's character now.
All right, so we've talked about the rules, the satire, the sounds, but the Wikipedia article mentions these different eras of the cartoons. Like, after Chuck Jones, when Warner Bros. Closed their animation studio, what happened then?
Well, that's an interesting period. A company called DePetty Freelang Enterprises took over making the Roadrunner and Wile-E Coyote cartoons. But a lot of people agree that the quality wasn't quite as good.
So what changed? Did they, stop following the rules?
Kind of, yeah. They didn't pay as much attention to detail, and the animation style was a bit different. Some fans felt like the humor was more, just slapstick and not as clever as before.
It's like a whole different interpretation of these characters. That's really interesting.
It is. And it makes you think about what makes these cartoons so special in the first place. Was it Chuck Jones's vision? Was it following those rules so strictly? Or was it something else, something you can't really put your finger on? I think that's something for the listeners to think about.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of curious to check out those later cartoons now. Maybe they're still funny in their own way, but it's interesting how a change in the creative team can affect a series so much.
That happens a lot in the world of art and entertainment, right?
Yeah.
The original creator moves on, someone else steps in, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But it always adds something new to the story, a different way to look at it. Makes you wonder, right? Like, were those classic cartoons so good because it was just like a special time for Warner Bros. Animation?
Yeah, there was definitely something about those cartoons. The art, the jokes, the way they pushed the limits of animation.
Oh, absolutely. But even though the later cartoons maybe weren't as good, it's still cool to see how these characters kept going, kept finding new fans.
It's like they took on a life of their own. The article mentions all these spin-offs, they popped up in Tiny Toon Adventures, even the Electric Company. Wild.
That's what's amazing about them. They work as slapstick, as cultural icons, even for, teaching kids stuff.
I remember watching Tiny Toon Adventures while E was, the mentor for Calamity Coyote. It's funny, though, right? He's supposed to be this teacher, but, can he even build a rocket that works?
But you gotta love how much he keeps trying. Even though he always fails, he never gives up. Always another plan, another gadget, another way to get that Roadrunner.
It's like he's got this endless optimism, he really thinks he's just one Acme product away from winning, which, when you think about it, is kind of sad.
Yeah, there's definitely a tragic side to him. He's so determined, so clever in a way, but he's always going to fail.
It makes you think, though, what if he used all that energy, all that creativity for something else? What if instead of chasing the Roadrunner, he was, like, inventing something amazing?
Now, that's an interesting thought. Could Wile E. Coyote, the super genius, have actually changed the world if he, you know, focused on something else?
Instead of Acme rockets and magnets, maybe he invents the self-driving car. Or cures the common cold. Who knows?
It really makes you see him differently. We think of him as a failure, right? But what if he was just using his talents in the wrong way? Maybe he could have been this amazing inventor, a visionary.
Okay, now you're really blowing my mind. I'm never going to see Wile the same way again. But it's not just him. This article talks about how those cartoons impacted, like, all of pop culture.
Yeah, they're way bigger than just cartoons. You see them in music videos, ads, even, like, legal stuff.
I remember reading that parody trial, Coyote v. Acme in The New Yorker, while E sues the company for selling him all those faulty products.
Oh, that's a classic. Captures how ridiculous his situation is, right? He keeps getting hurt, keeps using these gadgets that backfire, but he always comes back for more.
It's like he's addicted to the chase, even if it means getting blown up or crushed. And that feeling, that obsession, I think a lot of people can relate to that. We all have our own roadrunners, those things we chase, even though we may never reach them.
That's just like being human. We want more, we want better, we want what we can't have. And sometimes that takes us down some pretty crazy paths.
Just like Wile ordering another box from Acme, thinking this time it'll be different. But it never is it?
Nope, not for Wile E. But that's part of what makes these cartoons so great. They remind us it's okay to mess up, to fail, to even look silly chasing our dreams. It's about never giving up, learning from our mistakes, and, laughing along the way.
And speaking of laughs, those visual gags, they never get old. The fake tunnels, the rockets, the way Wile bends and twists when he falls off cliffs. Hilarious.
They're like masterclasses in physical comedy. So simple, but they work perfectly. It's all about timing, making things bigger than life, and surprise.
Like that bit where Wile paints a tunnel on a rock and the Roadrunner just zips right through, and Wile slams into the wall. Genius.
It's all about playing with what we expect to happen. We see the trick, right? But Wile, he's so focused on catching the Roadrunner, he falls for it every time, and that's what makes it so funny.
We're in on the joke, and he's the punchline. But even though we're laughing, there's that feeling of, like, I've been there. We see ourselves in his mistakes, in that never-ending chase for something we can't have.
And that's what makes these cartoons more than just silly slapstick. They show us something real about being human. Wanting to achieve things, being frustrated when we fail, and finding the funny side of it all.
I'm starting to think Chuck Jones wasn't just a cartoonist. He was, like, a philosopher, a social critic. He really understood people,
Oh, he definitely did. And he used humor to show us our flaws and make us think about the world. But he did it in a way that anyone could enjoy, kids and adults.
Which is probably why these cartoons are still so popular. You can watch them just for the laughs, or you can, like, really think about what they're saying. There's meaning hidden in there. And some sharp satire, too.
It's like those pictures where, at first, you see one thing. Then you look closer, and there's something else hidden in there.
Exactly. The more you look, the more you find. And speaking of finding things, the article mentions some weird places where Wile and the Roadrunner have popped up. Like, did you know they were in Twisted Sister music videos?
Oh, yeah. We're not going to take it, and I want to rock. Perfect fit, right. They're all about rebelling against the rules. Just like Twisted Sister.
It's funny how these cartoons, which were making fun of things, ended up being loved by rock stars.
It shows you how these characters can be anything. They can be interpreted in so many ways, and all depends on who's using them and what they want to say.
Like the chameleons, they fit in anywhere, but they're still Wile and the Roadrunner.
Exactly. That shows how brilliant the original idea was. But it also makes you wonder, what is it about them that makes them work so well in so many places?
Yeah, like, why have people loved them for so long? Is it how simple they are? The humor? Or is it something deeper?
That's a great question. Maybe there isn't one answer, But I think it has to do with how they show us things that are true for everyone, no matter where you're from or how old you are. Wanting to succeed, being afraid of failure, how absurd life can be.
And maybe, just maybe, we all have a little bit of Wile in us, That drive to keep going, that belief in ourselves, even when things look bad.
Maybe. But don't forget, there's a Roadrunner in all of us, too. That part that keeps moving forward, looking for something better, exploring new things.
And maybe the point isn't to actually catch the roadrunner. Maybe it's about enjoying the chase, the whole journey, the good and the bad, the wins and the losses. That's what makes life interesting.
That's a great way to put it. And, I think it's time to move on from just the characters and talk about the artistry behind them.
Yeah. Let's get into the technical stuff. The animation, the sounds, all those amazing visual gags. There's so much to talk about.
Definitely. We focus on the jokes and the characters, but we can't forget that these cartoons are incredible works of art, too.
So let's take a look at how these comedic masterpieces work. It's time to move from what makes us laugh to how they make it look so effortlessly funny.
Let's start with the animation itself. It's so fast-paced and fluid, and all those exaggerated movements, they just perfectly capture, like, the cartoon physics of this crazy world.
Yeah, it's like its own set of laws, right? Think about those scenes where Wile runs off a cliff.
Oh, classic.
He just hangs there in midair for a second, like defying gravity before he falls straight down.
Pure genius. Like, they play with what you expect to happen, they build up the suspense, and then bam,
yeah,
he crashes. You know it's coming, but it's still funny.
And painful, but mostly funny. And the way he stretches and twists when he falls like he's made of rubber or something.
That's the beauty of animation, right? You can do stuff that would be impossible in a live-action movie. And Chuck Jones, he was the best at pushing those boundaries.
Yeah, he really was. And we can't forget about the backgrounds in these cartoons. The article mentioned how they changed over time, becoming more like abstract and stylized.
Oh yeah, the early ones had those like pretty realistic desert landscapes. But then Maurice Noble came along. He turned those backgrounds into these crazy, vibrant, almost surreal places.
They're like paintings, but like they're moving and alive, and they just fit so well with all the crazy action that's happening. It adds another layer to the whole thing.
Totally. They make this world that feels kind of familiar, but also completely fantastical. It's the perfect place for Wile to cook up his schemes and for the Roadrunner to, just zoom around and escape.
And the music. Don't forget the music. It's so energetic, almost jazzy. You can't forget those tunes.
The music is so important. It sets the whole mood. It keeps things moving, builds the tension, and even adds a bit of, like, playfulness to those crazy chases.
It's like the music is its own character, right? It tells us how to feel, when to laugh, when to hold our breath.
Exactly. And the sound effects, especially that iconic beep, beep. We talked about where it came from, but it's just perfect for the Roadrunner. It's like a sonic representation of how fast and carefree he is.
So simple, but so effective, like a little exclamation point, Every time the Roadrunner shows up, beep, beep, and it's like he's mocking Wile for failing again.
And all those sounds for Wile's accidents. Mm-hmm. The crashes, the explosions, the bones crunching, it makes it all so much more real, Like you can almost feel it happening to you. It's funny, but you kind of feel bad for him, too.
Yeah, like you can almost feel those Acme products backfiring right in your face. But even though it's all so chaotic, there's still a sense of fun to it.
That's what's amazing about these cartoons. They mix chaos and control, slapstick and sophistication. It's this crazy world, but it makes you think, too.
And it's all thanks to the artists who made them, right? The animators, the musicians, the sound designers, everyone who worked behind the scenes to bring Wile and the Roadrunner to life.
They were true masters. Yeah. They took animation to a whole new level, and what they created is still inspiring people today.
This whole deep dive has really made me appreciate their work. From the big ideas down to the tiniest details.
It shows you the power of creativity, imagination, and a good laugh.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Wile, Coyote, and the Roadrunner.
It's been a pleasure. And to everyone listening, keep learning, keep asking questions, and remember, there's always something new to discover, even in the things you think you know really well. All right, so that idea you sometimes see like in movies or books about the end of history?
Yeah.
It's kind of a wild thought, isn't it?
It is.
Like society reaches some ultimate state and then, well,
what happens next?
That's what we're diving into today.
Cool.
We've got this Wikipedia article on the end of history.
Okay.
And it might not sound like the most exciting source at first, but trust me, it gets surprisingly deep.
Oh, it really does. It touches on some really big philosophical thinkers throughout history. And, it makes for a fascinating journey through these ideas.
Okay.
And it's important to clarify that the end of history doesn't necessarily mean like humanity just stops existing.
Right. Not like some apocalyptic event or anything. It's more about whether societies could reach kind of a final stable form.
Yeah, like imagine a world where we've figured out the best possible systems of government and culture.
Okay.
What happens next?
Yeah. Do we just coast?
That's a core question this whole idea raises.
Okay. So not the literal end of time, but maybe the end of a certain type of change or progress.
Right.
It makes me think of like postmodernism.
Oh, yeah.
Which the article mentions briefly. Can you unpack that connection a bit?
Absolutely. Postmodernism really challenges that whole idea of a single linear narrative of progress.
Okay.
It suggests we become more skeptical of those grand stories about how history unfolds.
Yeah. Okay. So in a way, the end of history in this sense could mean we're questioning those old ways of thinking about societal advancement.
Exactly.
That's a pretty big shift.
It is.
It makes you wonder where this whole end of history idea even came from.
Well, the phrase itself was first used by a French thinker, Antoine Augustin Cournot, way back in 1861.
Wow, 1861. That's a lot earlier than I would have guessed.
It is. What's really interesting is that he tied it to the perfection of civil society.
Okay.
So right from the start, we see these different ways to interpret this concept.
Yeah.
You know, later you had thinkers like Arnold Gellin and Heidegger.
Who grappled with similar ideas. But the real heavyweight here is Hegel.
Hegel, the German philosopher.
That's the one.
Okay, that name rings a bell, but it's been a while since college philosophy.
Well, he's a bit of a brain twister, but his ideas are central to this whole discussion.
Okay.
The tricky thing with Hegel is that it's debated whether he believed in an actual endpoint to history or just saw reason as a driving force, kind of shaping how societies evolve.
So it's like history's a puzzle, and we're trying to put the pieces together to see the full picture.
Right.
But Hegel wasn't sure if there even was a final picture.
That's a great way to visualize it.
Okay.
He saw history as the realization of reason, like humanity's constantly striving for greater understanding and rationality.
Okay.
One example is the evolution of political systems from monarchies to democracies.
Okay.
You know, a move towards systems that are based more on reason and individual rights.
Right.
But whether that process has a definitive endpoint, even Hegel scholars debate that. Okay, starting to piece it together.
Good.
But Hegel was writing centuries ago. What about more modern thinkers?
That brings us to Francis Fukuyama.
Go.
Probably the name most people associate with the end of history today.
Yeah, I've heard that name.
His famous essay came out right before the Berlin Wall fell in 1989.
Wow.
Talk about timing.
Right. He was writing during a huge turning point in history.
Exactly. Fukuyama's argument was basically this. With fascism and communism defeated, liberal democracy was becoming kind of the dominant model.
Okay.
He saw it as the peak of ideological evolution.
Like we'd reached the best system, and now it's just a matter of everyone catching up.
Well, not quite that simple.
Okay.
Fukuyama knew not every country perfectly embodied liberal democracy.
Right.
His point was more that in the realm of ideas, it had become the leading force.
Okay.
Even if not universally practiced, he argued there weren't any serious ideological rivals anymore.
Interesting. But hasn't history kind of proven Fukuyama wrong? We've had 9/11, the rise of new authoritarian regimes, all sorts of conflicts.
Yeah.
It doesn't exactly feel like the end of big ideological clashes.
That's a common critique, and you're right, the world hasn't magically become a utopia.
Yeah.
The period after the Cold War was sometimes called a vacation from history.
Okay.
Because of the optimism that those big ideological battles were over.
Vacation from history.
Yeah.
I guess we're definitely back to reality now.
I think so.
Which makes me think of that 2022 research article mentioned in the Wikipedia entry.
Yes.
That's where things get really interesting.
It does.
Because it uses math to tackle this whole question.
Right. It's a fascinating approach. This study used something called Markov processes.
Okay.
Think advanced statistical modeling to analyze historical data on political systems and make predictions about how they might change over time.
Hold on, they're using math to predict the future of politics.
They are.
That's wild. So what did they find? Is democracy taking over the world or what?
It's not quite that straightforward. Their model actually predicted that democracies will become more prevalent.
Okay.
But there will also be a temporary surge in autocracies along the way.
Okay.
Basically, history doesn't follow a straight line towards some perfect endpoint.
More like a winding road with some unexpected detours.
Exactly.
And what about this idea of a temporary surge in autocracies?
Yeah.
What does that even mean for people living through those times?
It's a sobering thought, right?
Yeah.
It suggests that even as we move towards systems with greater individual freedoms and democratic principles, there might be these periods where authoritarianism gains ground.
Wow.
The study even estimated the average lifespans for different political systems.
Oh, really?
They found democracies tend to last around 244 years, while autocracies average about 69 years.
Whoa, those are some thought-provoking numbers. Democracies lasting centuries longer.
Yeah.
That's a big difference. What do you make of that?
Well, it certainly raises questions about the long-term stability of different political systems.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that even with complex mathematical models, predicting the future is never a sure thing.
Definitely something to ponder.
It is. And it shows us that even an idea as abstract as the end of history can be explored using data and scientific methods.
So we've gone from philosophical ponderings to mathematical models, all in just a few minutes.
We have.
But before we go any further, I think we need to pause and ask ourselves, what does all this actually mean?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right. We've looked at the history of this idea, different ways to interpret it.
Yeah.
Even how math can be used to model political evolution.
Absolutely.
But the big question is, how does all this knowledge connect back to our listener and their understanding of the world?
All right.
Exactly. We've established that history isn't ending in the sense of everything just stopping.
Right.
But if that's the case, then what does the future of social and political evolution look like?
Are there entirely new systems we haven't even imagined yet?
Yeah.
Is there more to the story than we can currently grasp?
Okay, mind officially blown. I feel like we've just scratched the surface here.
And that's what's so exciting.
Yeah.
Even something as seemingly final as the end of history can spark endless possibilities.
I love that. So to our listener, here's something to think about.
Okay.
What does the future hold? What might the next chapter of human history look like? Hit us up with your thoughts.
Yeah, it really is a question worth thinking about.
Totally.
You know, it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and forget to zoom out and think about these bigger historical trends.
We can feel like history is just happening to us.
Yeah.
But taking a step back and looking at these long-term patterns can be really eye-opening.
And that's what's so valuable about exploring concepts like the end of history.
Yeah.
It forces us to confront these fundamental questions about human nature, how societies evolve, and ultimately where we're headed as a species.
It's like holding up a mirror to ourselves and asking, where are we going and how did we even get here?
Exactly. And I think one key takeaway from all this is that historical processes are incredibly complex.
Okay.
There's no simple straight line or guaranteed destination.
Right.
It's messy, it's dynamic, and often unpredictable.
And that's what makes it so fascinating.
It is.
Because if we let go of the idea of a fixed endpoint,
yeah,
it opens up so many possibilities for what the future could hold.
Absolutely. It frees us from those deterministic ways of thinking.
Right.
And allows us to imagine alternative paths, new innovations, and maybe even completely different ways of organizing society.
So instead of focusing on the end, maybe the real question is, what's next T?
I think that's a brilliant reframing.
Okay.
It encourages us to become active participants in shaping the future, not just passive observers waiting for some predetermined outcome.
It's empowering to think that we have a role to play in how things unfold.
It is.
That our individual and collective choices can actually influence the direction of history.
And that brings us back to the importance of understanding the past.
Okay.
By grappling with history and these big ideas, we gain valuable insights that can inform our actions in the present.
It's like learning from the successes and failures of those who came before us.
Exactly.
So we can make smarter choices about the path we want to create.
History isn't just about dates and textbooks.
Right.
It's a living, breathing tapestry of human experience with valuable lessons for navigating the present and shaping the future.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It reminds us that we're not just isolated individuals living in the moment.
Right.
We're part of this long chain of events, ideas, and actions stretching back through time.
And reaching forward into the future,
Yeah.
each choice we make adds another thread to that tapestry.
That's a powerful thought.
It is.
It makes me feel both a sense of responsibility and a sense of possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've talked about the philosophy, the history, even some mind-bending math.
We have.
But what about the real-world implications of all this end-of-history talk?
That's a crucial point. It's important to remember that this concept has been used to support different political agendas.
Oh, right. Like how Fukuyama's work was sometimes interpreted as saying,
right.
Hey, Western liberal democracy is the ultimate system, case closed.
Exactly. And that interpretation has been used to justify everything from promoting democracy abroad to, unfortunately, even military interventions.
But as we've been discussing, history hasn't exactly gone according to Fukuyama's prediction.
It hasn't. The rise of new challenges like global terrorism,
right.
the comeback of authoritarianism in some places,
yeah.
and the increasingly urgent threat of climate change, these all show us that we're far from reaching some kind of stable endpoint.
So buying into the end of history narrative can actually be dangerous.
It can.
If it makes us complacent or gives us a false sense of security.
Absolutely. We have to stay aware, adaptable, and willing to engage with the ever-changing complexity of our world.
Which is where critical thinking comes in, right?
It is.
We can't just accept these big sweeping narratives without questioning them.
Right.
We need to analyze them, consider different perspectives, and really think for ourselves.
Exactly. And that's what we've aimed to do in this deep dive.
Yeah.
We haven't given any easy answers, but hopefully we've given you some new tools and perspectives to think critically about this idea.
I think we've definitely given our listener a lot to chew on.
I hope so.
Some historical context, philosophical food for thought, even a dash of mathematical modeling for good measure.
Right.
But there's one piece of the puzzle we haven't explored yet.
Ah, you're talking about the cultural side of things.
Exactly.
What does the end of history mean for art, literature, music, even our daily lives?
Exactly. If we're supposedly at the end of history, what does that mean for creativity and how we experience the world around us?
It's a profound question and one that probably deserves its own separate deep dive.
Yeah.
But in short, the idea of history ending can lead to a sense of stagnation, a feeling that everything's already been said and done, like we're just living out the epilogue of human history.
In a way, yes. And that can be a very stifling feeling,
right.
especially for creative individuals who thrive on pushing boundaries and exploring new ideas.
Right. If there's no next chapter to write, what's the point of creating anything new?
But here's the thing about humans.
Okay.
We're inherently creative beings.
Yeah.
We have this drive to explore, innovate, and express ourselves in unique and meaningful ways.
So even if we reach some kind of political or ideological endpoint,
yeah.
that doesn't mean creativity or cultural evolution just stop.
Not at all. In fact, it's often during periods of relative stability that we see the most significant artistic and cultural breakthroughs.
That makes sense. If the basic structures of society feel secure,
right.
people might be more likely to take risks, experiment, and challenge norms.
Think of the Renaissance, for example.
Oh, yeah.
That was a time of incredible artistic and intellectual flourishing that emerged from a relatively stable political and social order. So the end of history, if it even truly exists, might not be the end of progress at all.
Right.
It could actually...
We still have the capacity to create a more just sustainable and meaningful future.
And that's where I think the true value of exploring these big ideas lies.
It does.
It reminds us that we're not just passive passengers on this ship of history.
Right.
We're the crew, the navigators,
the
architects of our collective destiny.
Beautifully said. It's a responsibility we should approach with humility, but also with audacious hope.
Couldn't agree more. Wow. Okay, so we covered a lot of ground here.
We did.
From some pretty heavy philosophical concepts to historical analysis. We even threw in some mind-bending math.
Just for fun.
That was quite a journey.
It was. And throughout it all, I think we've uncovered something crucial. This idea of the end of history. It's so much more complex and nuanced.
It really is.
Than it might seem at first glance.
Yeah, we've seen that it's not about a literal stop to time or events.
Right.
But more a shift in how we view things.
Exactly.
A questioning of those traditional narratives about how progress happens.
Precisely. And that shift in perspective, it can be incredibly liberating.
Yeah. How so?
It allows us to reimagine the future,
Okay.
embrace uncertainty, and see ourselves as actively shaping the course of history rather than just being swept along by it.
It's like we're given permission to write our own story,
In a way, yeah.
create our own destiny,
Right.
both individually and as a species.
It is a powerful message, especially in a world that often feels overwhelming
Right.
and beyond our control.
For sure. It reminds us that even amidst all the chaos and uncertainty, we have agency. We have the power to make choices.
We did.
That can ripple outwards and shape the world around us.
And those choices matter perhaps now more than ever. You know, we're facing these unprecedented challenges.
Right. Climate change, social inequality, technological disruption.
All of it.
It can feel pretty daunting.
It can. But those challenges also present incredible opportunities for innovation, collaboration, and creating a more just and sustainable future.
You're absolutely right. And I believe that this end of history debate, even with all its complexities, can actually help us navigate these challenges.
How so?
I think by understanding the historical context, the different interpretations, even the potential pitfalls of this idea, we can avoid falling into those traps of simplistic or deterministic thinking.
Precisely. We can't just assume that things will inevitably progress in a certain way.
Right.
We need to be mindful, critical, and proactive in shaping the kind of future we want to see.
It requires us to challenge assumptions, embrace diverse perspectives,
Absolutely,
and engage in open and honest dialogue with each other.
It's about moving beyond those old ideological battle lines and finding common ground based on shared values and a collective commitment to building a better world.
You've put it beautifully. The end of history, if anything, should be a call to action.
It should.
A reminder that the future isn't preordained. It's a canvas upon which we can paint our hopes, dreams, and aspirations.
What a beautiful way to frame it.
So to our listener out there, we'll leave you with this final thought.
Okay.
What will your contribution be? What brushstrokes will you add to this ever-evolving tapestry of human history?
The future is unwritten, and the pen, in a sense, is in your hands. Go forth and create something extraordinary.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into the end of history. See you next time.